Welcome back to the Triple Option presented by Wendy's. Rob Stone, Urban Meyer. We are now joined by the brand new head coach at Iowa State, Jimmy Rogers, who has been on the job, according to my math, just around 89 days. How do you describe those first 89 days for you?
A little bit of a whirlwind. It helps that I had some experience in doing this just last year, but if you combine this year and last year, it feels like a decade. I think I've set record for the most amount of players watched as far as recruiting in the country, as far as the amount of players that we replaced in 2 years on a team.
Well, that brings me to this question. Thanks for joining us, Coach. And we have such great respect for Iowa State and obviously your career. So the number was thrown out 81, and I just hit you with that a second ago. For an old guy that did it when you were signing 15, maybe to on a big year, maybe 22. And I was telling these guys a story yesterday on our pre-call that I'd be in a plane, a private jet, and I'd probably be in 4 to 5 states a day, just closing it up back in the day, because I always thought you had to have dinner with the families and get to know them. But I actually talked to a Division I coach, and this is where my question to you is, he said they're signing kids that they never met, that he never met. So he's putting his name, his reputation, his team, the state university on a handful of kids that I was with him one day and he goes, "Oh, look, I just signed a linebacker." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" And he said, "Yeah, I never met the guy." And we signed him. So 81 players, you certainly didn't have 81 dinners and you didn't have letters for these guys for 2 years and all that. How do you even go about signing 81 players? That's 53, just for the viewer, 53 transfer portal players and 28 freshmen is what I've heard.
Yep. Yeah, we'll return 44 players from last year's team to this year's team, 28 freshmen. 8 of those freshmen are currently mid-year enrollees, and then the 81 transfers. Now, all of these transfers aren't people that it's not like I don't know them. Several of these players came with me from Washington State, just like my initial move from South Dakota State to Washington State. I had brought 29 players from South Dakota State with me to Washington State. So, and then there are many players that made this transition again with me when I came here. And then obviously there's the relationships that we've had in the past with players that I've recruited or coaches on our staff have recruited that maybe we didn't get them in recruiting coming out of high school, and there was a prior relationship. As far as not had 81 meals with families, I've had 81 sit-down one-on-one meetings for every kid that's come through this building, as well as every player that left the building. I had the opportunity to meet the current team. That was maybe different this year than it was last year. I had the opportunity to sit down with our players one-on-one for 45 minutes to an hour and figure out the positives of Iowa State and things that they've liked, things that they enjoyed, things that they would want to see changed, and then just their overall feel if they were going to be entering the transfer portal or not. They were great. Many had decided to leave and go to Penn State or look for another home elsewhere, but I feel like we got the right group of guys to stay, guys that were passionate about staying here and continuing their career here at Iowa State. And then I'm excited about the guys that we were able to bring in. I know it's somewhat crazy to even think about putting together a team with 81 new players at the end of the day. And I know nobody likes to hear this. This is the modern era of college football. And I think the more that it happens, the more the players are accepting of transfers coming in, and it's not seen as a big deal. I would never like to do this again. I like recruiting high school players and developing them through, and molding them from start to finish.
There was our guys heard, or there was a story that you have a decent relationship with the previous Iowa State coach, Matt Campbell, that went to Penn State, and you guys actually had communication about when guys were leaving, and which, it's fairly unusual. When I replaced a coach, usually I said hi and thank you and, hey, wish you the best and all that, stay in touch. But there were never the open portal like it is now. So tell us about your relationship with Matt Campbell, and was there cooperation between the both of you?
Yeah, I've known Coach Campbell for years, just having come up here when I was at South Dakota State. I spent a decade of my coaching career coming up here for prospect camps, and they were always really welcoming to allowing visiting coaches to come in and see the recruits. So our relationship has grown, and it's not that we're best friends by any means, but he's always been open and honest. And I knew a lot of the other coaches that had left. I would say the collective group, they didn't want to see Iowa State, go to shambles. But honestly, and nowadays they have to deal with what I've had to deal with here. So knowing who could be leaving or which players that they would want to ask to come with them was pivotal because it allowed me to kind of understand the numbers at every position group that I would have to be replacing and think out ahead of, okay, this player says that he's open to hearing us out, but he's really out the door already. Um, it allows us to have a bigger scope of the amount of players that we were willing to accept through the transfer portal as far as looking for the next group of players rather than just cutting it off and saying, well, we got one, and then figuring it out right before the portal closes that we just lost one, and now we're not looking at the best group of quality players that we could bring in.
Before I turn this over to Rob, so I'm just trying to visualize. So every coach has a room, Rob, just so you know, that's their recruiting room plus their roster room. I imagine that's still the way it is, where you would have your quarterbacks, and everybody wants 4 to 5 quarterbacks. If you get stuck with 2 or 3, or you lose a tailback, do you simply go to you go to a portal and say, okay, what's the net, and start calling and and then you start going down the list? Is that how, and then someone's already watching that tape, maybe the position coach? Take us, because I'm still mesmerized by how this transaction takes place.
Yeah, our recruiting staff does a great job. It's led by our GM, but we have a recruiting staff member assigned to every single position group as well as the position coach, especially when you're replacing this amount of numbers. The position coach is really involved in this. I would say the hardest thing and the most unique thing is when our coaches are needing to call agents. I would say that is really unique because that doesn't happen in the NFL. So yeah, we put together a list. We start to see what positions or what running backs say are out there. We put together a list, and then we start watching their film, and our recruiting staff will create a cut up. A cut up is the good, the bad, the ugly, as well as trying to do as much research on the individual as possible. So before we took a kid, there was like probably 3 to 5 calls to people that we knew that maybe were at their prior stop or their high school coach, and just try to get a feel of who the kid was and what type of player and person he was. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you're not the best worker or not a great teammate or kind of just go through the motions, that's not any player that we would want to add here. So there's a lot of research that's done prior to the kid, and then there's the watching the film and saying, is he going to fit the scheme? Is this kid good enough to play here, and will he impact us? And then trying to see if that kid's now interested. Obviously, you got to hit a range these days as far as what the kid is going for, like his going rate, and then filtering through the agents of what his BS
Going rate
reality is. It's.
We're really talking about this, aren't we? We really are. Coaches calling agents, and what's the going rate? That just came out of your mouth. And I know it is. I'm just What's the going rate?
On the flip side, what has been the sales pitch to come to Ames and be a Cyclone?
I think honestly that they were going to get authentic, genuine leadership, and that the best players will play. A lot of these players that we've brought in, it's very similar to my trip from South Dakota State to Washington State. I looked for players that had a certain edge to them, that felt like they had something to prove. When you look at the bulk of our players that we've taken in, a lot of these guys, if they came from the lower ranks, they were really like a higher profile type player, an All-American, an all-conference player with a ton of snaps. Some of these guys are young as far as like a freshman All-American. I thought there was a ton of upside in that, especially coming from certain FCS schools that I knew were good programs that taught their guys the right things and were about substance. And then there was a lot of players that came from maybe a higher profile Power 4 school that had a ton of reps, but maybe didn't always start, but there was enough film and proof there that they said that I could say that they're going to add value to the team and they would have the opportunity to compete and push to be a starter. I promise nothing ever to any recruit other than the fact that the coaching staff will, give our best to them and push them to develop to be the best player and person that they could possibly be. But I think when I speak to the players, they realize that I'm not full of it because I keep it real with them. I keep it real with their parents. I promise nothing other than the opportunity to come in and play at Iowa State if they're deserving of it because they do the right things.
Hey, real quick on a personal note. So 9 times, Coach, I moved, and my wife, I guess I didn't even realize I did it, but I guess those big 3 words, power of attorney. I never looked at a house, never bought a house, never moved from a house, and never went to a closing, Rob. So I'm imagining you've had your wife is going to punch you right in the face the last 3 years. So have you told her, okay, are you buying, selling? What are you doing? Are you renting or what's going on?
You know what? We bought in Pullman, Washington. I love the house too, but I'm still trying to sell it. And right now we're renting because we're going to build here. I expect to be here. I plan to be here. I'm going to work to be here.
She hasn't punched you in the face. I'm looking
You
at
know
you.
what? My wife is from South Dakota. So when I
Closer
brought
to
her to
home.
Washington, it was a little bit of a culture shock. And now bringing her back to Iowa, my kids were ecstatic about the move, just getting closer to their grandparents and their cousins. So it's a real good fit for us. I mean, where we're from is only 4 hours away, so it's drivable, and yeah, it's been good.
Coach, I'm fascinated about football in the Dakotas, right? And I know you're a South Dakota State guy, but we hear more and more conversation about football programs in both of those great states. So what is coaching in the Dakotas like, and how has it strengthened? How has it shaped you?
Yeah, I would say just like Iowa, there's not a professional sport to it. You are the professional sport. And all the players, it's grown in my time there. South Dakota State has grown, surely. It's been a place where you were able to get a really good player in there, and then we were able to start winning, and then we were starting to beat some group of 5, group of 6 schools in recruiting, and we were finding maybe not the high-profile star player, but we were finding people that love football, that were wanted to be a part of something bigger than themselves, and they came in and worked their butts off, and we committed to them and they committed to us. And over the years, we've, both South Dakota State, North Dakota State, we've been able to push and develop a lot of really talented players that have gone on to have great careers in the NFL. And I think it really starts with having relationships with the players more than anything else, because some of those players learn maybe slower, that maybe if they would have went to a higher profile school, maybe they got pushed out. And through years of, development and grace, they were able to develop to be the best that they could possibly be and develop the habits to have success in the NFL and then stay in the NFL. They're littered in the NFL right now. And I'm proud to say I was a part of that, but that's what I'm trying to do right now here at Iowa State.
Let's talk a little bit about coaching trajectory that we discussed this yesterday as a staff of our pre-call. But when I was a young coach, it was you go to the biggest school you possibly could. You try to become a coordinator if you can, and then you go to a MAC, a Mountain West, a Western Athletic Conference, and then you try to move up your way up. I always felt like the smaller school, 1AA, I think it used to be called, and there were great coaches there. I always felt that way, but they never would seem to get this shot. And then you got the Signetti factor, obviously, what just happened at Indiana. You got your movement. There's Oklahoma State, Auburn, UCLA, Iowa State, and Florida all took coaches from the smaller conferences, or even I guess I'm going to call it 1AA because I'm so old, but
FCS. Yeah.
FCS. So do you see a change? And it's a positive change, because I always felt, damn, when I was in the MAC conference, coach, it was the hardest conference of coaching because everybody's the same. You didn't have the advantages. Every school, when they jogged out on the field, coaching was the difference because there wasn't the big talent difference that you see in some of these conferences.
Yeah, I would say watching the NFL, watching FBS football, watching FCS football, and then Division II and Division III, even to high school, you see more exotic things and more unique things that maybe haven't hit the highest of level. At the higher levels, you see a really standardized play than kind of really how you see the NFL. I would say the schemes aren't as exotic at the FBS level or in the NFL. You see more nuances and wrinkles probably at the lower levels because they have to find ways and be creative to utilize every player on their roster. They may not be better physically across the board up front. So, yeah, for me, it wasn't about trying to get to the next big school. I've had a lot of opportunities to go up a level, and after a while, people were starting to think I was nuts because I never left. And it's always been about be where my feet are at and try to give my best to the players in which I coach. And I would end up having enough success to try to be able to take my pickings rather than take a job to try to hope to get to the next job. Actually, I've turned down jobs because I've had head coaches tell me in the hiring process, like, it's not about this job, Jimmy, it's about the next one. And I just thought, you're going to lose. And I didn't take those jobs. And lucky enough, those coaches were fired that season, and I wasn't a part of that. So I think it's about being present, and just, if you get into coaching for the right reason, it's not about a dollar, and it's not about really the level in which you do it at. It's more about how can you impact and how can you create the best competitive team that you possibly can year in and year out.
Coach Rogers, we like to let our guests have an opportunity to ask us a question here on the Triple Option. So you got a Hall of Fame coach that you're on the line with right now. You get an opportunity to ask Urban Meyer one question. What is it, Coach?
I would say, what is maybe the most influential person in your life throughout the coaching journey, and why? What experience did you have with that person, and how did you learn maybe the most from that person?
Yeah, humbly, I say that I had two mentors that were like fathers. Lou Holtz, who's not doing well. He's in hospice care as we speak. I went and saw him recently, and my wife got really emotional because without Coach Holtz, he hired me at Notre Dame in 1996. And then there was a guy named Earl Bruce that was Woody Hayes' protege that became he hired me as a young coach at Colorado first as a graduate assistant at Ohio State. Then I followed him to Colorado State. But they were always on speed dial, and they were the kind of people that weren't much about patting you on the back, but it was always about how to get better. And that's the way I was raised. I didn't really surround myself with the bobbleheads or the people that, that I want to get better. If you're going to come watch practice, in which I used to have a ton of friends come, in the profession, and the one rule is they had, you can watch practice, but you're going to write a report and how we can get better. We don't have much time for the hugs and all that other stuff. Make us better. And what I always found out, Coach, there's always a better way to do it. You're going to come across someone in your journey and you're like, damn, why didn't I think of that? And it's going to make your team better. So that's be my encouragement to you and that's what I did. And certainly Lou Holtz and Earl Bruce did that hundreds of times in my career.
Coach Rogers, who are your mentors right now at this stage in your coaching career?
Yeah, I would say the people that I've always called for guidance, it'd be John Stiglmeyer, the prior head coach at South Dakota State. And then I've always, when I needed him, called for advice from Clark Lee. I played for Clark Lee. Clark Lee's first full-time position job at 25 was at South Dakota State University. And he's kind of, when I watched him as a young coach, although at the time he presented himself like a 40-year-old man, he gave me so much as far as, man, this is what coaching looks like at a really high level, the detail in which he coached us, the preparation that went into it. And I've tried to always carry myself in that sense as far as how we've prepared our players. And as I've developed, I've started to tone back so much of the extreme of just allowing our players to think less and play fast. So, yeah, but he was a big part of why I wanted to get into coaching. And then over the years, I've been with one head coach for a long time. I played for John Stiglmeyer And then I coached underneath him. I was at South Dakota State for 19 years. So to be around that type of person, I catch myself nowadays almost acting like him. Is almost like I'm acting like how you start to act in pick up things, like how your father did. And now I know more now about why he did what he did being a head coach than I did why I was watching him do these things. And I thought, why does he do this? But now I know why, because I catch myself doing some of those things.
Nice. Coach Rogers, we wish you the best of success in Ames this year. Hopefully we'll see you on Big Noon Kickoff. Thanks for the time. Thanks for joining us this week. And that does it for the Triple Option. Remember to follow, subscribe, rate us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is you get podcasts. We are on social media at 3X Option Show. And as always, thanks to our wonderful sponsor, Wendy's. We'll see you next time on the Triple Option.